In this lesson, what we're going to do is talk about the broad nature of democracy for the democracy and participation topic for A-level politics. Now, we're going to be focusing on a number of specific things. We're going to be talking about a lot of the basic concepts surrounding the nature of democracy and some of the basic principles that exist and how we understand what democracy is and how we can define it and how we can delineate different kinds of democracy that exists. So, as I've just mentioned, we're going to explain the definition of democracy, and then we're going to talk about some of the main features of democracy, including mainly the features of what we would describe as a representative democracy, before we begin to delineate between what we would call a representative democracy and a direct democracy. So the first question that we need to answer, and it's relatively straightforward, is what is democracy? Well, the word democracy comes from the Greek words demos and kratia, and effectively demos meaning, broadly speaking, the people, and kratia meaning rule by or power of, etc., etc., etc. So we can combine these two words together to come up with the word democratia or democracy, which refers to rule by the people or the power of the people, power given to the people. And this indicates what democracy actually refers to, rule by the people. That's effectively what it is. It can be its definition can explain the concept, which is quite nice. So the concept of power or rule by the people in a society, the idea of democracy, as you can probably understand it coming from the Greek word demos and kratia, comes from ancient Athenian society. So ancient Athens had a system whereby people would be chosen to vote on different issues and politics, etc., etc., and people would come in each year and they would have a say in the direct policy-making process within Athenian society. And so it means that the rule of the people existed in the form of what we would describe today as a direct democracy. A direct democracy, which we will define later on in a bit more detail, simply means that the people have direct control over the direction of government or over the direction of policy or anything of that sort. We have a direct control over these issues. Now, it's increasingly rare in modern society for direct democracy to be practiced in any meaningful sense. We do in the UK practice direct democracy in some regards. So, for example, through the issuance of referenda, that's an example of how direct democracy is used today in the UK. But for the most part, the Western world effectively operates under a system of what we call representative democracy. So, what are the features of representative democracies? Well, in the first instance, representation is one of the key concepts. It refers to the representation by others of the people within society. So, in the United Kingdom, representation is done by members of Parliament or members of the devolved bodies, like the Scottish Parliament or the Welsh and Northern Ireland assemblies. And members of Parliament and other representatives are voted on by the people. So you are voted into office by the people in a particular constituency. In the UK, for the Westminster Parliament, there are 650 members of Parliament in the House of Commons. That means that there are 650 constituencies, which are just effectively small sections of the United Kingdom. We just divide the United Kingdom into 650 sections, and what we have is that those people in that constituency will vote on who they want representing them in Parliament, their member of Parliament. So this is a simple way in which representation operates. Every single person who lives in a constituency has their own member of Parliament. Mine, for example, is I believe the leader of the House. Yes, he is the leader of the House. I'm just trying to work out who my member of Parliament is, Mark Spencer. So we know that this is how the representation works in the United Kingdom. And it introduces the next feature, and this is participation. This is another feature of democracy. Because MPs are voted in by the people, the act of actually voting in elections give people the ability to participate in the democratic process. You have your say when you go to the ballot box and put a cross in the next to the name of the person who you want representing you. And if everybody does this, turnout, unfortunately, is not as high as it should be, but if everybody did this, then everybody would be participating directly in the process of the elections, okay? This same thing happens for referendum when we look at direct democracies. For example, in 2016, during the EU referendum, membership of the European Union referendum, you see that people turned out to this referendum to put a cross in the box next to the preferred option that they wanted for the future of the country. Now, another result of the fact that people are voting in representatives, it means that the MPs are accountable to the people, or in this case, people are accountable to the people, as in members of Parliament. The people who were in Parliament are accountable to the people. So this refers to the fact that if an MP doesn't do a good enough job, then the people can vote them out. You're accountable to them. Your job as a member of Parliament hinges on the fact that you are being voted in and you are being supported by the people who are voting for you in your constituency. Now, obviously, you have the choice. If you do some terrible things, you may have to resign as a member of Parliament, or if you're a Minister of State, you may have to resign as a Minister of State and go back to being a backbencher. But for the most part, the people who control whether or not you stay in office are the people who are going to be voting on you in the next election. So it gives a certain amount of accountability to the people. So you have to effectively do a good enough job to allow to basically effectively convince the people who are voting for you, hey, this is the job I'm doing, it's a good enough job for you, therefore you should vote me in the next election. And if they do, then obviously they agree with you. And elections are another important process when we're talking about the nature of democracy. All the previously discussed features of democracy, participation, representation, accountability are made possible, and only made possible because of the existence of and use of elections. Elections are the process whereby people go and turn out and to vote publicly on representatives that they want. Effectively, in such a case of a representative democracy, we vote in MPs. We vote in representatives, people who are going to do all the work and all the actions of government and policy making and passing legislation that we, on our behalf. They do this on our behalf. That's why it's called a representative democracy. In the case of a direct democracy, which we see when we look at referendums, people have a say directly on the particular issues. So in a normal process of representative democracy, what we see is that the people vote directly for the members of Parliament, for the representative, and the representative vote on the issues. Well, in the case of a direct democracy, such as referendums, we remove this representative from the middle. We have the people voting directly on the issues, not voting for a representative who will then vote on the issues. So that's the difference between the two. The representative democracy, you could almost describe it as a three-stage process. The people vote the representative, who votes for the issues or the policies or the laws. In a direct democracy, it's only a two-stage process. The people, or a single-stage process, the people vote for the single issues. Simple as that. So let's think about the features of a direct democracy and then look at the features of a representative democracy before we finish. So direct democracy again refers to the direct participation from the people in the government and policy process. Now, this is done through the use of referenda in the United Kingdom, and referenda are votes on binary issues over specific areas of policy. So, for example, in 2016, the vote on whether or not the United Kingdom should remain a member of the European Union. In 2014, there was a vote on whether or not Scotland should remain part of the United Kingdom. There are referendums on things such as the Good Friday Agreement, referendums on things such as the voting for a new election an electoral system, an electoral process in 2011 with the alternative vote referendum, etc., etc., etc. Now, no modern states really make use of direct democracy for the process of day-to-day policy making. On the one hand, the advantage of direct democracy is that it is the most and the purest form of democracy that we have. People have a direct say in the decisions that are made for the country, okay? There's no way in which we can just, where the people will vote for a representative and then the representative goes and does things that the people don't want them to do, which could happen in a representative democracy. In a direct democracy, we vote on every single issue. That's a good positive for direct democracy, the idea of it being the most democratic system that we have. But the reason why no modern state uses it is because in theory, on paper, it's a very good idea. It's a very well-meaning idea. It makes use of democracy in its most purest form. But in reality, it would be too impractical for population sizes of modern states. And it'd also be impractical for the fact that people have day-to-day lives that they have to deal with. And if they all have to then go out and vote on issues relating to, for example, fiscal policy, monetary policy, immigration reform, prison and justice reform, people aren't going to be able to be informed on all of these issues. Only select few people who have enough time on their hands, or who have or who make these things their actual full-time job, have the ability to sit and research all of these issues. They have to research fiscal policy, look at the impacts of certain laws or policy decisions. Modern populations just simply don't have that ability to do so, and there's no reason why they should. There's no reason why the entire population of the United Kingdom should have an intricate and deep understanding of the best fiscal policy for the United Kingdom, or the best the method of immigration control. That's not an issue that people should, that the whole country should be able to be involved in, because it involves a lot of research, a lot of detailed understanding. Which is why we vote representatives to do all that research, to do all that that study effectively, and to do all of that stuff as their full-time job, so that they have a better, more informed understanding on the issues, and so can make the better, more informed choices when it comes to voting. And it's also, like I said in this bit here, it's also impractical for the simple population sizes of modern states, and the simple fact that Parliament churns out many, many, many laws every single year. New policies are introduced all the time. We'd effectively be voting on policies every single day, which is something that is just incredibly impractical to do. But instead of using direct democracy fully for the entire country, or for the entire process of government, we decide to employ direct democracy in situations relating to specific, rather quite large issues. So, for example, constitutional issues tend to be voted on by referenda, at least very, very impactful constitutional issues. So, for example, membership of the European Union, that's something that was put to a referendum. Now, you might argue whether or not it should have been put to a referendum, but regardless, that is a significant enough issue that was to merit the voice of the people in a direct vote. The same thing happened for the AV referendum, Scottish membership to the United Kingdom, the Good Friday Agreement, etc., etc., etc. So we only use direct democracy or elements of it for specific issues, like referenda in the UK. In the United States, they use initiatives, and they also use propositions when it refers to state-level use of direct democracy. Again, these are examples of them employing direct democracy, but only in limited ways. So we've only had one referendum. The last time we had a referendum was 2016, many years ago. So we can see that referendums aren't something that are increasingly popular. Okay. Finally, representative democracy. This is where the vast majority of democracies in the Western world operate. This is how they operate. They're mostly representative democracies. In a representative democracy, the people vote on representatives, as the name suggests, who make policy decisions on their behalf, as we've already mentioned. Now, there are two main models that are theorized in regards to representative democracy. The first being the delegate model. This is the idea that representatives should and ought to vote according to how their constituents wish them to do. So, according to the delegate model, the representative, the member of parliament, hears what the people have to say, hears what their constituents have to say about these things, and then goes to parliament and votes on their behalf. Even if they might personally disagree with how the constituencies feel about a particular issue, they should go and they should vote relating to, or at least in favour of, the things that the constituents want them to do. That would be arguably a more democratic way of doing it compared to the trustee model. The trustee model states that a representative should vote according to their best judgment. The argument being that they should be able to know best when it comes to policy decisions, seeing that it's their full-time job to be a member of parliament or to be a member of Congress or a senator in Congress. So these are the two models that are adopted. Arguably, the delegate model is more in the spirit of democracy in terms of it actually giving more of a voice to the constituents. But then on the other hand, the trustee model might actually end up with people voting on things using their best judgment, and possibly even voting for the thing that is ultimately the most correct decision, or the most moral decision, or the best decision for the country. So there are two ways we can look at representative democracy. There are lots of pros and cons relating to both of them. There are merits with both the delegate and the trustee model of representative democracy. They're both democratic in nature, although neither are as democratic as a direct democracy, which obviously also has the issue of impracticality.